Welcome, everyone. You are in for quite an evening. I know that's why you all came. Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve McLaughlin. I'm the president of the Cooper Union, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here to the historic Great Hall. The Cooper Union is one of the nation's best colleges for students pursuing degrees in architecture, art, and engineering, each connected to others through a focus on the humanities and social sciences. And on behalf of our students, we are in the midst of working to restore the legacy of our founder, Peter Cooper, who believed education should be as free as air and water. Through the generosity of so many, we're making great strides towards eliminating the burden of tuition for all students. In fact, today, every student receives a half tuition scholarship, and nearly 60% of our students, including every senior, attend tuition free. And we wouldn't be remiss if, as you've seen on the screen, we're in the middle of a $1 million fundraising campaign. And so please consider giving. If you're inspired to do that, please join us. There's a QR code on the back of your program. Please scan it to learn more. In this very room, for more than 165 years, the Cooper Union has been a destination and free public forum where artists, activists, and visionaries from all sectors and fields, along with everyday voices, connect with New Yorkers, shaping their city and beyond. I'm pleased to say that this remains a place where creative and critical voices meet. And tonight, that is certainly true. We're about to experience together an extraordinary story, a story of present day, a story of one person's courage and conviction to turn a spotlight on how an authoritarian regime's pro-war propaganda was designed to indoctrinate even the youngest of its citizens. Before I introduce the film and our guests, I'd like to thank the Robert David Lyon Gardiner Foundation for making programs like tonight possible. Their generous funding underwrites our ongoing Gardiner Foundation Great Hall series, and we're grateful for their support. I also want to thank our fantastic colleague, Margette Long, who is photographing tonight and is part of Cooper's IT team, and it's really her idea that brought us tonight's program. So thank you so much, Margette. Now, on to our screening. We're honored to bring you Mr. Nobody Against Putin, the Oscar-winning documentary depicting Pasha Talankin, a Russian school teacher and videographer who secretly recorded the pro-war propaganda that was systematically directed at school children following Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. It's a compelling account of one filmmaker's act of resistance. Pasha is here with us tonight, along with his co-director and writer, David Borenstein. Following the screening, both Pasha and David will be in conversation with Russian-American journalist, author, and New York Times opinion columnist, Gessen. So, we're pleased to have you here tonight. Here is Mr. Nobody Against Putin.
Привет, это я. Я работаю педагогом-организатором в Карабашской общеобразовательной школе номер 1, а также по совместительству школьным видеографом.
Передадим большой привет в камеру.
Этот кабинет – оплот демократии.
Или просто создавать пространство для того, чтобы они могли быть детьми. В настоящий момент я еще понятия не имею, сколько неприятностей я создам себе в будущем.
Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
Должны либо прочитать стихи, либо, сделать презентацию, либо фотку.
План не здесь!
Мне же поручили это все снимать. Я для них, получается, пропагандист.
Я люблю свою работу, но не хочу становиться пешкой режима.
Ты в тюрьму захотел?
Ну, что вам Евгения Владимировна будет говорить, она выучит.
Живешь в стране нелегально, паразитируешь, уезжай.
я могу показать миру ту пропасть, в которую мы все катимся. Это идеальное прикрытие.
Никогда не застегивай. Никогда. Потому что если он выходит в голову, вы сломаетесь.
Нет, Паша, не обижай людей.
А еще вот здесь у меня флаг.
Я думаю, то, что ты сделал, может оказаться чем-то очень важным.
Войны выигрывают не полководцы, а школьные учителя.
Please welcome David Borenstein and Pavel Talankin, the co-directors of this film, and Robin Hessman, the executive producer, who will also be translating.
Hello, hello. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Спасибо.
I do believe this is the appropriate reaction. I love this movie. Congratulations on the Peabody, you guys.
Thank you.
So, we're going to talk for about half an hour. I'm going to ask questions about the making of the movie, but first, tell me about being Oscar winners. What's that like? It's been a month and a half. How has that changed your life? What has it done for you, for the movie? What's it like?
В день перед Оскаром приехали журналисты из BBC и говорят: слушай, Паш, а зачем тебе вообще нужен Оскар? Для чего он тебе?
The day before the Oscars, Pasha was with a journalist from the BBC, and they said, Pasha, why even do you need an Oscar? What's it for you?
Я им говорю, как есть, я его ни разу в руках не держал. Не было такого шанса, чтобы я его когда-то в руках подержал. Я не знаю, сколько он весит. Мне очень интересно.
And I said, well, I've never in my life held an Oscar in my hands. I don't know how heavy it's going to be. I don't know what it feels like. I don't know what it's like. So I would like to have that chance.
Вот. И поэтому я исправляю эту ситуацию как могу. И на некоторые показы тоже привожу с собой Оскар. И я его с собой привез, но Дэвид его оставил дома и не взял его с собой
And so
сюда.
usually I bring them with me. I bring it with me in different situations so audience members can also get to have this experience. But unfortunately today, David left it in Brooklyn and did not bring it with us.
I'm sorry.
So sorry to everybody in Cooper Union that you're not going to get to see how heavy the Oscar is. And it's heavy.
Sorry. But I will say my experience of that moment of winning the Oscar first was utter shock. And there are many pictures sent to me of my face from my childhood friends. All of these stills that show me in various states of utter shock. But then after that, it was terror. Because I had seen at that point so many people from the unimportant categories, sound and makeup, us, documentary, get kicked off in the middle of their speech. And so what I did immediately, because we had planned if we won, I would speak first and then Pasha would speak. I just had this nightmare of me giving a speech and then Pasha going and then him getting kicked off and then him hating me forever. So I ran to the stage. I just ran as fast as I could. I was on the stage 20 seconds before anybody else. And so I just started speaking. And I think you would have done the same thing, because if you saw in person how they kick you off, It's humiliating. Did anyone watch it? It's crazy. There is like a microphone that's like right here, and as they're kicking you off, it just retracts into the ground. So like people were giving speeches like, oh, and blah, 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 and then it just goes away. And I just had this terror of that happening to Pasha, and so I ran.
David, you have only gotten through the first 20 seconds after getting the Oscar. How has your life changed?
Well, one good thing about campaigning for an Oscar is everyone's very understanding. So I had some TV projects and stuff, and everyone was like, yeah, just get back to us when the Oscar's over. Like, we know you're campaigning. And then it all hit right after. And so now all of the work that I had been holding off forever has come back. And so for me, it's been very stressful, like catching up with everything. And then, of course, yeah, like it is strange, these things where it's kind of this like instant change. I'm the same person, and all of a sudden you have this flood of invitations to get coffee with people. I'm a very eager to please person, and I don't know how to say no to people, so I'm just trying to say yes to everything, but it gets to a point where it's overwhelming, and so you just have to learn how to deal with these things.
David, I also think you're forgetting some big things that have happened very recently that have happened because of the Oscar, of flying to Washington and some activism.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's been a big part of the last month for me, because when I was on stage at the Oscar, I chose to use some of that time to talk against this merger that's happening, the Paramount WBD merger. And that is something that's going to really batter an industry that we work in that's already been battered. It's been really, really hard to make any kind of film that's socially engaged or political if you're in the documentary space. And I think this merger is going to make things so much worse. And working within Russia, or on a project about Russia, I mean, the parallels between what happened to the media in Russia as well in Orban's Hungary, it's just too stark to ignore. So yeah, I mean, a big part of the post-Oscar life for me has been advocacy.
Thank you for that. Robin, what about you?
My life post-Oscar? Well, I will say there's still a lot of invoices in my inbox from the campaign that I am fielding, but we've also been talking about Pasha's next life. He's getting some nice invitations from Middlebury and places, but I also have projects that have been a little on hold, and David and I are talking about interesting things that we might want to do together that are very much in the spirit of Mr. Nobody.
So
моя жизнь тоже поменялась вообще.
I am about to ask you.
Меня признали иностранным агентом на территории Российской Федерации.
I was officially named a foreign agent on the territory of Russia by the Russian government.
Within days. Within days of the Oscar, you were no longer Mr. Nobody.
Решением суда этот фильм запрещен к републикации на всей территории Российской Федерации. Всего официально только 3 фильма, которые запрещены на территории Российской Федерации. Это 3-й.
So, and then the film was officially banned in the territory of Russia. In history, there are 3 films that have been banned in Russia, and this is the 3rd one.
Да. Спасибо. Фильм «Навальный», который 2 года назад получил Оскар, не запрещен на территории
The
Российской
film
Федерации.
Navalny, which won the Oscar 2 years ago, is not forbidden in the territory of Russia.
Mr. Nobody Against Putin запрещен.
And Mr. Nobody is.
We always say that it's a high honor, but of course it's also very difficult to be banned in your own country.
По российским законам теперь к любому показу этого фильма, даже не на территории Российской Федерации, потому что мое имя указано в титрах, первые 30 секунд должна быть плашка, что этот фильм запрещен на территории Российской Федерации. Вторые 30 секунд должно быть плашка, то, что фильм сделан иностранным агентом.
So with these two official proclamations by the Russian government, it means that every screening of the film, even not on the territory of Russia, should begin with a big banner saying this film is banned on the territory of Russia for 30 seconds. And after that is this very official text, Masha, you probably know by heart, of what any foreign agent who publishes or says anything or makes a Facebook post or writes to their kids' teacher and their parent-teacher conferences about what the following text has been produced by an agent and foreign agent. But you could probably do that actually. So that is supposed to be on every time the film is shown anywhere in the world for a full minute.
И еще одно очень важное условие, что буквы должны быть в 2 раза больше, чем самые большие буквы в фильме.
And the other stipulation of that of the text in the beginning is the letters are required to be 2 times as big as any other letter that appears on the screen ever.
Но если вы помните титры к фильму «Mr. Nobody Against Putin», это титры на весь экран.
So if you remember how the title of the film appears, it is on the entire screen.
Да. То есть, если мы бы соблюдали все эти правила, ну, конечно, никто их не собирается соблюдать, у нас титры бы ползли вот так, как в «Звездных войнах».
So if we actually were to follow this rule, which of course we're not going to, the titles would wind up being like Star Wars and going like off into the distance.
All right. So that's the aftermath. But let's go back to the beginning now. In the movie, we get a little bit of a sense of how you two connected, but can you tell us the real story?
So we connected through a casting call. There was a casting call put out in Russia by a Russian web content company. And that Russian web content company was looking for teachers across the, or not teachers, they were looking for people across the country whose jobs had been affected by the quote unquote special military operation in Ukraine. And what they were looking for were actually positive stories from the Russian perspective. So they were looking for people to write back and say, yeah, we're like writing letters to the soldiers in support. But Pasha sees this ad and he got really angry and he wrote what you saw on the film. He wrote, I've been turned into a propagandist and I'm coming to work every day filled with guilt and rage. So we sent that in. And over the next few years, he would do lots of risky things for this film. This was kind of like the first risky thing that he did, just send this message to a random Russian production company on the other side of the country. But as it turns out, his message landed on sympathetic eyes, and it was sent to me. And we started talking, and we started making this film together.
And Pasha, how did you imagine David?
Точно не ФСБшником, потому что его первое сообщение было «Привет, я знаю о тебе много, а ты про меня ничего не знаешь».
So when I got the first message from him, I knew that he at least couldn't be an FSB agent because the message was like, hi, I know all about you, but you don't know anything about me.
That sounds just like an FSB agent to me.
Иногда, уже когда мы работали над фильмом, уже когда была оскаровская кампания, уже иногда даже после Оскара, я все-таки за ним замечаю некоторые странности.
So even along the way, and even on the campaign, and maybe even after the Oscar, I sometimes observe in him some kind of strangeness and peculiarity.
Oh, that would be correct.
Он очень-очень редко, практически никогда не отзывается на свое имя.
He very, very rarely, almost never, responds when people call his name, reacts to his name.
Я ему, Дэвид, а он мимо проходит. Я думаю, что происходит, кто этот человек?
His real name is Sasha.
For years, my people have had their heads in the Talmud studying.
All right, but all these jokes sort of belie the fact that you really didn't know if you could trust this person, and you didn't know if there was going to be a movie on the other end of this. And you had to place yourself in their hands, and then you disembarked in Istanbul?
Были, может быть, из-за ярости, может быть, из-за того, что я не знал, что делать, может быть, из-за того, что я хотел показать, что происходит в школах, из-за злости, что началась война, из-за всего этого я стал отправлять ему материалы, а потом уже, когда голова остыла и чуть-чуть в себя пришел, и стало понятно, ну, первый шаг уже сделан, и уже разворачиваться поздно.
Maybe because I was just so furious about what was happening in the country and so angry. Maybe because I was just so intent on getting this material that I was filming out there in the world. I was just doing it and sending it. And then, you know, after a beat, when I was thinking, oh, it was kind of too late anyway. The first step had been taken, so I just kind of went on.
So, David, you were receiving all this footage, and you had some uncommon ethical decisions that you had to make about how you could use, what you could use. How did you go about that?
Yeah, it was really difficult to figure out, and it wasn't the kind of thing that any one person can figure out on their own. So one of the very first things that I did after connecting with Pasha was to pitch the film to BBC to try to get some support. But it was a weird pitch. I remember at that point we had some scenes of the propaganda classes. We didn't have much more. And I showed it to them. And it was a weird pitch because I was saying, look, this footage is amazing. I mean, it's giving us real-time insight into what is driving this on an ideological level within Russia, what is driving this full-scale invasion. But I said, but maybe we shouldn't do it because it's an ethical minefield. How can we figure this out? How can we protect people? How do we deal with issues of consent? How do we do this? But they kind of took me by the hand and they said, like, we're the BBC. We're going to figure this out. And we really relied on them. They came through. They gave us money in the very beginning. The very first sum of money that was given to this project was for hiring a security consultancy. And then the BBC came through with their own in-house team separately. And we just started working together. We started thinking in terms of security, in terms of the editorial. How do we tell this story? Very early on, we determined, okay, we have to tell this through Pasha. Like, it has to be all Pasha because we cannot evacuate everybody from Karabakh. There would have been times where it would have been so satisfying to add a little bit more Masha, a little bit more Vanya, to get into them a little bit more, to learn more about them. But we kind of had to keep them a little bit at arm's length because we couldn't expose them to the extent that there could be a reprisal against them. And this line was something that was debated and kind of studied internally in the BBC a lot throughout the process. So security kind of guided editorial from the beginning. Everything is on Pasha. And then the cornerstone of this security plan was, of course, getting Pasha out. And that took a long time of figuring out visas, of figuring out an escape plan, figuring out how to make that happen. And that was like the 2.5 years of production. A lot of that was like waiting for that to happen.
Ну вот для Дэвида были самые страшные несколько дней, суббота и воскресенье. У нас фильм уже был готов, осталось только музыкальное сопровождение вставить в этот фильм.
So there were two very frightening days in the making of this film for David. The most frightening were the Saturday and Sunday, when the film was basically all done. We were still just waiting for music.
И я ему говорю, так, теперь я беру этот фильм, устраиваю созвон со своими студентами, и если они говорят «да», они остаются. Если они говорят «нет», мы вырезаем их отовсюду.
So now I'm going to call the kids, and I'm going to ask if they will be in it, and if they say yes, we have a film, and if they say no, we have to cut them all out.
And you mean the kids who are actually adults who are hanging out in your office, right?
The Pasha students, his group.
И Маша из фильма сказала, почему меня так мало.
And Masha, when she saw the film, said, "Why is there so little of me in it?"
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't realize this until you pointed this out, David, that in the movie you don't see actual kids say anything unless they're reading from a piece of paper. And the only people who actually speak are adults.
Yeah, that was a little editing trick in a way. If you are a kid, you actually only read from scripts in this film. You're doing propaganda classes that were orchestrated by the Russian government. And all of the characters who again, they're still a little bit at arm's length, but anyone that you really get to know by name, Masha, Vanya, we chose to film people or focus on people because there was a large archive that Pasha gave me with many potential characters. But the characters that we chose to really put in the film were all people who would be adults when we released it. And when he says, you know, the kids that I talked to, it was these people. It was Vanya, it was Masha, it was the red-haired kid, Simon. Yeah.
So Pasha, how did you know it was time to leave?
Когда мы делали этот фильм, я думал, что мне максимум придется сменить регион. Куда-нибудь уехать во Владивосток или в Калининград.
At the beginning of making this film, I thought maximum I would need to leave Karabakh and go to another region of Russia. I'd go to Vladivostok or somewhere else and just relocate.
Но потом стали вводить репрессивные законы, и стало даже запрещено говорить слово «война», только специальная военная операция.
But of course, over the period of making it, there were more and more repressive laws that were passed, and it became illegal to say things like the word war instead of special military operation, and things got a lot more complicated.
Потом появилась статья, что нельзя плохо говорить про российскую армию.
Then there were laws that you couldn't say anything negative about the Russian army.
Нельзя говорить о погибших на этой войне.
You can't actually talk about anybody who's been killed in the war.
И за разглашение этой информации ты можешь получить 17 лет.
And violating any of these can land you in prison for 17 years.
И позвонила продюсер и сказала, что фильм выйдет только в том случае, только при том условии, если ты уедешь из России.
And the producers in Europe called and said this film will only be released in the case that you are already outside of Russia. Otherwise, we can't release it.
And that's the tape that we hear at the beginning of the movie.
Except they wanted Pasha to leave earlier. This was in around March in the school year, and Pasha had been with this particular class who was graduating forever, and he wasn't going to leave them before the school year ended and before they graduated. So to everybody's consternation and worry, Pasha delayed his departure by about 3 months so he could be there at graduation.
I wasn't clapping when he told us that. There was a police car outside his house. There were all of these incredibly worrying signs. And for me, that period of time in 2024, spring going into summer, it was so stressful. We were on the edge of our seats. We were wondering if this plan to get Pasha out was going to work. We were wondering if he'd be able to get past the border. I mean, we were so nervous. And then he's like, I'm going to stay for 3 more months.
So Pasha, you flew to Istanbul, I believe, and How long before you saw a cut of the movie, and what did you think?
Я думал, у меня было очень много эмоций в голове.
I had a lot of different emotions in my head when I saw the movie.
И я перебирал все мысли перебирал.
I sorted through all of my thoughts.
Вот. И задавал вопросы, почему некоторых сцен в фильме нет.
And I did ask David why there were a few scenes that were not there.
That was like a few weeks later. I'm going to quote you. There's two things that you said on that first watch that I thought were both really telling.
David говорит, что
One, he watched it and he said, David, I was 50% certain this whole thing was a scam. Now I'm watching a real film. And then the other thing you said, Pasha, I gotta say, is, damn, if I knew this was real, I would have worked even harder.
Фантазер.
Fantasy.
But actually, I'm really interested in what at least one of the things that you thought was missing, because that to me is one of the most interesting conversations we've had.
Очень важная сцена, для меня очень важная сцена, которую Дэвид не хотел брать. И я уже сказал, либо эта сцена будет в фильме, либо я собираю вещи и уезжаю в Россию. Это сцена про собрание учителей, где учителя говорят, что падает успеваемость, и где директор в моем кабинете сидит и говорит, если я начну учить детей, меня уволят с директоров. Где все учителя говорят, давайте мы не будем этим заниматься, давайте будем только учить детей.
So one of the scenes that was really, really important for me that was in the film, and I told David that this one has to be in, was the meeting of the teachers, where they're talking about how the kids' grades are falling because of all of the time that they're spending not teaching them the curriculum, but having these lessons. And the teachers are terrified they'll be in trouble if they don't do it, and they have to do it, but the kids are not learning what they need to learn.
И я помню, как мы с Дэвидом разговаривали. Я ему говорю, больше никогда, ни у кого, особенно после публикации этого фильма, не будет шанса, что тебе учителя расскажут эту правду, что падает успеваемость, и то, что они обязаны проводить все эти разговоры о важном.
And I said to David, we will never, ever have another chance to put out in the world this kind of honest discussion where teachers are saying that they are forced to say these things and do these things, and that the kids are failing as a result of it. And it is critical that we do this now while we can.
Я считаю, что это очень важная сцена, которая показывает, что учителя, они как в заложниках находятся в этом
And
режиме.
for me, it's so important because it shows how the teachers are almost like held hostage. They are hostages in this situation.
That definitely made the film better. Those last few weeks for me were really fun, just like listening to you, what you really just needed to have in the film, and we just like put it all in the film.
And what about the other one? What was the other thing that was missing?
Приезд Вагнера.
And the other scene that was missing that was important for me was when the Wagner mercenary group came to school.
To be fair, I had just missed that. He brought that out at the end, so that was like on his footage. And so I would have put it in. I remember one line that you wanted to add really bad that always moved me Of course, you know, like I did my best guess at his voiceover, and a big part of finishing it was like us going line by line and him saying like, no, I wouldn't say that, and then like fixing it. But I remember one line that you really wanted to add at the end. What was it? It was sometime, so it's in the ending monologue, and we're just sitting there, and he's like, you have to add this line right now. It was, sometimes to express your love, you need to sacrifice everything.
Ну и уже когда мы монтировали фильм, я ему говорю, мало любви, мало любви, мало любви. И монтажер себе на бумажке Николай написал, мало любви.
And so when we were editing, I would say, there's not enough love in it, not enough love. There's too little love, too little love. And the editor, Nikolai, would write down like, too little love, too little love.
Ну и да, вот у нас минута остается. Быть честным, мы когда монтировали этот фильм, мне всегда было стыдно за школу, то, что она в таком состоянии отвратительном находится, то, что у нас такие позорные стены, что у нас такие коридоры, что у нас скрипучие пола. Внутренне всегда было стыдно за это.
I have to say, honestly, that while the whole time we were editing the film and I watched the footage, I was kind of ashamed and embarrassed of the school, that our walls look like that we have those creaky floors, that the hallways are so sort of dingy, and I was just so ashamed of the condition of the school.
Но после Оскара министр образования Российской Федерации приехал в школу города Карабаша из Москвы в Карабаш.
But after the Oscar, the Minister of Education for the Federation of Russia came from Moscow to Karabach and went to school.
И учителя 3 дня подряд красили, белили и ремонтировали школу к его приезду.
And the teachers, in honor of his approaching visit, spent 3 full days bleaching, painting, and cleaning, fixing everything in the school.
Поэтому теперь эта школа отремонтирована.
So now the school is in shining condition.
All right. Last question. What are you all doing next, each of you? And Pasha, in particular, I want to know what plans you have for the incredible amount of footage that you still have.
Нужно будет его опубликовывать, нужно будет показывать, что там происходит, потому что это очень важно тоже.
I'll have to look through it all. I want to show it to people because what's in there is also really important.
And for me, you know, I'm probably in the process of getting myself blacklisted from all the major streamers because of all this advocacy. And that's okay, because my next projects were all with PBS anyways.
Robin?
New things afoot, but also we're still in the release right now, and so we're hoping that people will continue to watch Mr. Nobody. It's in theaters around the country, and it's also available streaming on the Kino collection. So if you liked the film, please tell people to watch it.
Thank you. Thank you for this movie.